Oh shit! I guess we could. I mean, we could end that and just talk about the. Do we want to talk about the Whoopi Goldberg thing? Because that technically is TV, but I know we're running out of time. So what do you want to do? What are your thoughts? What are we?
Run out of time at this point.
All right, so fuck Whoopi Goldberg. It's not worth it.
She's basically just a dumb shit.
Okay, we'll kind of mix in both. Okay, so Whoopi Goldberg, Joe Rogan, they're kind of both in the same situation. Really,
Yeah.
quick. We'll do it quick, Jake. I promise. I know you.
Big same situation.
No, not same situation. But I guess I would say, is her getting suspended? Does it help anything? Should she be? I guess I'm just asking for your opinion. Should she be suspended? Should she get fired for what she said? And who decides on that? Like, are we? I guess I don't know. There's 1,000 questions that could be asked, but
I only vaguely know what's going on with Whoopi Goldberg. The thing I seem to understand about it is that she said the Holocaust wasn't about race.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess, one, she's wrong, obviously, but there are like a lot of people who also that are just like Jews are white. And it's like, well, a lot of white supremacists don't think so. So maybe we should consider that.
It's also, I was like on Handy Dandy Twitter. There was a lady that was a Holocaust survivor who was like, oh, I'd love to come on the show and talk to her about it. Because she was like, she's just uneducated. Like she doesn't, it's ignorance.
Yeah, then stuff like this occasionally happens. And very typically it is just people who are saying shit they don't know what they're talking about with. Like there's a little bit difference. And this is, I guess, when it comes down to shit that happens like this, is intent and like purpose does matter. Like, yeah, I don't know what the consequences for like these kind of things should be, but like, it's not like she was out there in the streets of Charlotte talking about how the Jews will not replace us. There probably shouldn't be the same level of consequence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like in her defense, not that she's right at all, but her argument was that it was like it wasn't a race thing. It was a human, I forget what word she used, but basically trying to say like it's just humans being stupid, like being evil.
Yeah, and that there's the other point in that it's not like she's coming around to defend Nazis. Like she still was like, it was some crazy shit, just wasn't racial.
Exactly.
Once again, she's wrong about that.
Yeah, to clarify 100%.
Yeah. Because also, like, as much as, like, Jewish people were, like, the biggest focal point, it wasn't specific to just them. Like, there was also Romani and homosexuals were also, like, targeted just at wildly different rates. But it is, I don't know. I don't think you get fired for ignorance like it happened previously.
I think her suspension's I think her suspension's blowing it out of proportion and not belittling what she said. I could see people being offended by it, but it goes to the same thing with Rogan, where it's like, where do you draw the line of free speech? You know what I'm saying? Like
Rogan right now, I guess the whole thing is around the vaccine and the N-word and the concept of apparently, according to Joe Rogan, you can't be black unless you're like 100% from like Africa.
I saw that. Like, I didn't see the N-word thing, but I saw that.
There's a lot of people who are like Joe Rogan's apology, giving him credit, but it's like, yeah, for specifically the vaccine thing that started this whole kind of reanalysis. It's like, hey, that's just how capitalism works. Someone was like, I don't want to share a platform with this person, so I'm not going to. And a lot of people, and then quite a few people are like, well, I don't. Also, I kind of agree with that. That's just how it's supposed to work. So people who are like, this is cancel culture is like, no, this is just capitalism operating correctly. It's like, I disagree with this stance. And so I'm not going to support it with my money.
Go.
No, I was just going to, I think prior to people leaving Spotify and why is my computer not charging? No, it's fine. Prior to people leaving Spotify, I thought like if Spotify had just made the jump and just gotten rid of him, I would have thought that would have been wild. Like,
well, yeah, I understand Spotify not doing it.
Not even because
I gave him like $100 million. Like,
yeah, why would you?
I mean, but I also think I just think Joe Rogan needs to do better. Like, I understand his whole concept is like, so like when you think about what his podcast is, nobody trusts like mainstream media anymore. I don't even, and I'm not even a crazy person. Like, I just know there's a narrative to it, right? So like, I think he needs to do better jobs at asking questions if he wants to have these people on his podcast. Like, he needs to know enough to to combat the bullshit that they say.
Well, that's the problem. That's why people loved Rogan, because he normally would, because it would be like it would be like us just sitting at a table and we don't know anything, but we would still, he would ask questions that we're sitting at home wondering. Like, if this person starts to bullshit, he would normally have an opposing idea for this person to have to explain. I think lately, a big issue is a lot of like right-wing ideas or QAnon type ideas. It gains so much traction that it almost enables someone like him to have these same guests come on and build his audience, because he's bigger now. Like, like your number one cable show is a bunch of Fox News shows. Like, that's just how it is. So I think he knows that.
Also, like, as much as we're framing it, like, a lot of it's been around like the guests that he has. He still is also like, he's personally vouched for some bullshit. Like,
that's true, but also I was watching something when the vaccine first came out. He was like, I don't understand why people don't trust vaccines. He was advocating for them. I actually
well, but here's the thing. Well, you finish. Go ahead.
I don't know if the clip was when the vaccines were released, to be honest. But there's a recent clip in the last at least 2 years, because it's the new studio. He's like, I don't understand why people are so against vaccines. I don't like. He puts out all this information about
he was probably talking about specifically the anti-vax movement, which at that point was much smaller than it is currently.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, there was a part of him that was like, I find this to be silly. And to be honest, we don't actually even know if he's vaxxed or not. Like, that's the word on the street is it's very possible that he is.
Who cares?
Yeah, and what we do know is that he's been on his show and advocated for like things, some of them, which are like things that do help. Like I can't remember what it was. It was the same shit that Trump got when he got it. Like the
Regeneron?
Yeah.
Yeah, that shit.
The
that
steroid
shit does
thing.
actually work. But like that shit apparently does actually help. No one's really said anything against that helping. But you
also need to be rich as fuck.
You need to be rich as fuck. But he also in the same breath would advocate for ivermectin and for all these other things. Like more conspiratorial.
And that's why the way he does his podcast is unfortunate, because forget which doctor it was, but I listened to a few of them after this stuff happened. One of the doctors was saying that medicine, it worked, and he was going into all these things, these medications that have been tested that actually work to help with the coronavirus. And in the very next breath, he's talking about how the government is putting shit in the vaccines to kill us. And it's like, well, now there's conflicting information, because one of those things is not true. So it's like, ask the right questions and you'll have proper information that mainstream media won't tell you. And then you'll also filter out the bullshit that the government is not stabbing shit into you to fucking kill you with your vaccine.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it is that the more Alex Jonesy like type crowd ends up getting a really loud voice on his podcast, because he does do a lot of like really good interviews, not necessarily good interviews, but like there's a lot of interesting stuff that comes about from his format. But also like it gives a big voice to a lot of people who like are patently kind of sketchy people. Like
exactly.
And then it's like, oh, but we're just talking. It's like, well, but when you're as big as you are and people do like kind of live on your word the way that they for some reason do, you do have a level of responsibility to vet some of these people.
Exactly.
Like, to be like, is what you're saying, like, it's one thing to be like, oh, it's controversial. And it's another thing to be like, might be responsible for people fucking dying, essentially. Like, because of the information that you're like helping expound and put out there.
Exactly. And I personally don't think it's a bad thing to give these people the platform because, like I said, some of the shit that they're saying is true. And nobody else will tell you that it's true. But most of the shit they're saying is so fucking outrageous that that's what's getting like headlined and that's what's getting clipped. And nobody's going back at them at all, which is it's the crazy part.
Well, but that's because they choose who they're going to talk to on purpose. They're not going to go to people who are actually going to push back and do things like that because that would help their cause. Like they're all grifters in one way or another. And it's just not a good idea to give them that level of prominence that he has. And I'm not saying that Joe Rogan should like not have a podcast because that'd be fucking absurd. It's just, you're no longer just like the former Fear Factor host doing a little fun thing. It's like you're now one of the most listened to people out there.
Right.
I wonder if people even still know him as a Fear Factor guy. Like we know him as that, but like this generation doesn't know him as that.
Probably not.
He's the podcast guy.
There's probably more people. Yeah. I mean, he's Johnny Carson. Like,
yeah.
Nope. You're not important if you go on Jimmy Fallon anymore. If you go on Rogan, your numbers go insane. And I guess, that's like the biggest problem because if you go on the Joe Rogan show, you yourself get the Joe Rogan effect. You get that bump and then more people are watching you and more people like being on Rogan's show gives whatever that person is saying some credence from whoever's watching because they think Joe's a cool dude and Joe's a smart guy and,
Well, he panders. He panders. Yeah.
He does say he's an idiot.
He also, he's very clear multiple times been like, I'm not like a smart dude. That's not my thing. So people who still are like think of him as that way should know that he doesn't think of himself that way. And that's like, once again, like I don't dislike the podcast or inherently Joe Rogan. Like I think, like I said, there's problematic things that he's done and that like he's problematic ideas that he's like boosted that he probably didn't need to. But it's not like, I don't think that he's like this terrible actively, like I don't think he's trying to do a bunch of bad shit. I just do think that he's spending zero time considering any of like his guests or words or things like that.
Yeah. The way I think about Rogan is like he would be, if he was my friend, he would be that friend that like you don't agree with most of the shit that he's saying, but you enjoy having conversations with him.
Well, that's his show before it went to Spotify was like all of his conspiracy theorist friends coming on and Joe being like, yo, you're fucking nuts, dude. You need to chill out. And I forget his name. He was like one of the martial artists and he hasn't been on the show in a while. I don't know if they're not friends or whatever the case is, but he would always come on and he would always have these theories and Joe would be the one to be like, bro, you need to chill. Like it's too much. And now Joe has become the guy that he used to be back in the day before he got normal. I don't know because I don't really sit there for 3 hours. So I don't know like how the conversations go, but obviously.
Yeah, I watch the clips. The JRE clip channel on YouTube is what I watch.
I normally just watch Hassan Piker go over it and like, he'll pretty much debunk, like he had the Malone dude on, the scientist who was part of the mRNA vaccines. And this dude is sitting there talking and, he's regurgitating a bunch of information that we've all heard from like QAnon shit. And then he like slips in the fact that he's double vaxxed and you're just like, how are you? I don't understand.
But also let's not forget too, like I love Hassan Piker. I really, really do. And I watch the Young Turks, but let's not forget Hassan Piker is also very biased to the side that we lean towards. So it's like, that's why I kind of say Joe Rogan needs to do better because he's a very good in-between. He's a really good in-between, but he's not an in-between.
I wouldn't say that though, because Hassan talks shit about Biden all day, talks shit about Trump all day.
Yeah, because they're not Democrats. They're progressive. He's a progressive.
Yeah. Biden, I would say, is a lot of people from day one, I've been talking shit about Biden from all sides because he literally would not have won any other election minus this one. It's literally people were like, I fucking got to get rid of this one. This president we have.
I can't stand Biden. That's the only reason I voted for him, because I can't stand Trump more. It's like, which one? Yeah, literally why.
It's very sad that that's like 2 presidential elections in a row. People are like, oh my fucking God, I hate everyone involved. Yeah. But like, that's, I guess, where we're at as a country, because fucking boomers don't want to relinquish any power, buddy.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
I do like ice cream, though.
Hold for Everything podcast.